It's almost Florian Friday. In fact, it's, Wirtz's day. It doesn't work that way. And I don't think it's going to be Wirtz Wednesday. I just don't see it happening that way. Do you know what I mean? Don't drop it on a Wednesday. Doesn't matter. Anyway, it makes it all very exciting. And of course, we've been talking about this for ages. It's now just over a month since that news first broke. And a lot of people were in our comments saying, hey, you don't know what you're talking about, you idiot. We're never going to sign someone like that. And whilst there are now a bunch of people who are bringing in their hot takes and people who think it's going to work or it's too much money, it's not too much money. Look at the insane stats of Florian Wirtz. I'm just going to put a couple of graphics up on screen here. These come from a good friend of mine, Sam Maguire. He's got a Patreon article that he's written all about it. There is a link down there in the description. It is incredible. And I will be doing some stats videos on Florian ultimately when he signs for Liverpool, not at this point. I want to get the excitement going first. But what does it tell us about Florian Wirtz? And why is this Liverpool rebuild, as some people are branding it, actually just a Liverpool build? I'll talk about, in fact, let's just expand on that now. Last season, obviously, Slot was working with what was a Klopp-constructed squad. Predominantly, obviously, he added Chiesa in there, and, I think we'd sold a couple of guys, so it wasn't exactly the same team, but it was pretty much the same starting 11 or the same core guys, right? That's really important to remember that. And like I've said in other videos now, there are a lot of round pegs in round holes. He reprofiled someone like Gravenberch, made him go deep. He had McAllister playing in that double pivot. We had Szoboszlai as much more of like a 10, but not really like a creative 10, more of like a kind of an aggressive attacking 10. It was much more like a 4-2-3-1 than it was anything else. And we were beginning to get a better idea of what Slot was capable of. Adaptability, control, and just the idea overall that we were moving away from that intense football of Jurgen Klopp. And that was fine. There was still intensity. There were still moments where we had that control through intensity. It was not the same thing. And this summer, what we're doing now is fundamentally changing. We are not swapping players like for like. We're not going, well, if we didn't have Luis Diaz, who would we put in there? Well, if we didn't, if we want to replace Bobby Firmino, which is the kind of chat that we had initially around Florian Wirtz, what would we do? This is a fundamental rebuild. And the pieces that are making me realize that are Frimpong and Kerkez. And the real question we have to ask ourselves is not what will Wirtz do to fit into this side, but what are we going to fit around Wirtz to maximize him? And there are some clues with that, right? First of all, the clues that we saw at Leverkusen. He was clearly a left-sided 10 at Leverkusen. He was often overlapped by one or both of those fullbacks, and he had a great combination with Frimpong, who very often served him, but also the other players around him who maybe weren't the super expensive players, the Boniface types. Really great players, technically very good. They're not going to be breaking the bank for any of those guys this summer, though. What they are going to be doing is basically trying to enable Florian Wirtz rather than just seeing what Wirtz enables. And I think so far, a lot of the analysis, early on, a lot of the analysis was this guy's a 10 who fits in the hole. And there will be times where we see him operating as a 10. But similar to the profiles that I first did when he came to the club, I think we're going to see he's going to start on the left and come inside. He'll start on the left and drive out wide. He'll start on the left, combine with someone, and then end up in the box. If we end up getting someone like a Malik Fofana, what do we end up doing then? He'll play on the inside of him, enable him, probably come a bit more inside, be on the end of a Malik Fofana piece rather than on the other side of it. He'll combine with him. There'll be an underlapping run from Kerkez. This isn't just a one-dimensional player we're talking. There's a reason you spend £100 million on a player, and it's because of what he enables, the adaptability that he allows. And that's a huge part of Slot's games, adaptability, overall intelligence kind of tactically, rather than just, look, this guy fits here. That's where the frustration with Nunes came from. That's where the frustration overall with a couple of the square pegs fitting in round holes came this season. And that's fair enough. I don't really have a problem with the adaptability of last season's team. We won a title, but it was very clear there were also a couple of shortfalls. We could have gone further in the Champions League. And had we beaten PSG, I'm not saying we get to the final. I think PSG are a fantastic side who almost walked to the final at times. But I think we sort of consider this team a little bit deeper. We also become a much more attractive prospect, or an even more attractive prospect. That's kind of by the by. The point is, right, a couple of times you could see we just weren't quite adaptable enough. We weren't quite there. We weren't quite over the line. And that was down to the lack of width that we had in the team because our fullbacks weren't as mobile, should we say, as Kirkes and Frimpong. And it was also down to the fact that we were fitting up front a few square pegs in round holes. Wirtz solves that problem. And if we get someone like Malik Fofana, what does he then enable? He'll drop a little bit deeper, and he'll enable that space to just become wide open ahead of them. And that changes Liverpool. It shifts all of our emphasis down the field, first of all, because last season it was a lot more, well, what can we do with Trent? What can we do with deeper line playmaker here? And we can still do that. What we now have is players who will take the ball while the opposition is deep or in transition or whatever it is and hurt them. It's not that we didn't have that before. But now it's that we've got much more direct players, speedsters, a lot of people in the comments now saying, an adaptability up front, interchangeable elements within the side. You could see, obviously, last season there was interchangeable elements to the team, but I think this is a lot more interchangeable. This is a lot more, oh my God, what are they actually going to put out here? What is actually happening on the team sheet? There's going to be a lot more reading of heat maps, those kind of things that are going to make it just way more fun to analyse Liverpool, frankly, next season. So Vatz is a big signal that Liverpool are changing. Also, because obviously at some point you can imagine, of course, Klopp would love to sign a Florian Wirtz. That could have been our generation of who did he have? Who's the guy began with R? You know what I'm talking about. The blonde guy who used to play for them, smiled at Lewandowski. It was Lewandowski and him. Why can't I remember his name on the top of my... This is what father's nights of sleep do to you. And poor football knowledge. Either way, it worked. Marco Reus. He could have been a Marco Reus. He could have been a bit more central. I wouldn't have said he's exactly like that, but there is a Marco Reus element to him. And what this Liverpool team are doing is harking back to... I keep trying to look at older models that someone like Slot will be looking at as he was learning his coaching. And I always come back to this Barcelona side. I don't think Wirtz is quite a Deco, but I see elements of Deco in him and in McAllister. I don't think we've got I don't really think we have a Marquez type in our team. But what it does open up is that Barcelona side, they had some great strikers, obviously. But when they were really adaptable, Ida Johnson was a player through the middle for them. I'm not saying that's Florian Wirtz's style. But he wasn't exactly like a break-the-bank type striker back then, was he? And he wasn't the most prolific player. He was, again, a very, very good striker. What was good about him was he was really good to play off. And whilst we're being linked with Ekitike and Isak we were with Guy Carrez and Sesko, but both those guys are going to move on elsewhere now. Sure, that's great. Of course, I'd love a massive striker like that at the side for the sheer spectacle of it. But like I've said with Osimhen and those guys, I don't sign any of these guys, apart from maybe Isak and Ekitike, and think, that's the guy who's starting there. And that's mainly because of the style that I think Liverpool want to play, right? I think of them more as rotational players outside of that. And that, first of all, it's quite scary because, I think for opposition, it means there's a lot of different areas that goals can come from for Liverpool. But it also means that we don't have to go out there and break the bank for a striker. If we can't get Isak this summer, we will sign someone else. We will go out there and get a player for us to play off because Núñez can't do that. And that will unlock that £100 million worth of value that we see from Wirtz. What we're looking to do is maximise that to the £150 million valuation, to the Euro valuation, to be adaptable. Dembele is obviously a false 9 type. He is a 9, but he's a false 9 type for PSG. The 9 is very prominent, obviously, for City, but maybe Arsenal were playing that for a while with Kai Havertz. What they're looking to do is play those overlapping winger types who get the best out of those people in the middle, but are ultimately the threat themselves. And the threat shifts wide from where that striker was. Wirtz will help to maximise that. And I think at the moment what we're doing is we're going, where does Wirtz fit in his current team? But when you take Diaz, Núñez, and possibly even Gakpo, and obviously Chiesa out of this team, that's over half, that's just over half, of that front line 6. And really it leaves Mo Salah and possibly Jota, but even then at a push, what does that say about our attacking system? We're shifting hugely. And I think we are shifting towards the meta now, which is much more towards that PSG sort of style. But Vatz is a sign, a signal, an idea as to what we're going to do next. And this statement of intent is not just monetary. It's on the field aggression. And I love that for us. I'm so excited by that. I'd love to know what you guys think in the comments below. And yeah, I will chat to you in a while. Much love.